All right. Welcome in to the first Chatterbox Reds opening day Eve show. I am here in studio with none other than Nick Kirby. Nick, glad to be here with you. It's going to be a little bit awkward for us because we actually continue to use the show script that we've always had, which is split screen because we're usually at our house, not in studio. Therefore, we have two different cameras, and we're not able to look at each other. And if we look at each other, it looks like there's a big brick wall right down the middle. So we'll do our best to not have to do that. However, we do have a loaded show. We got a good amount of guests, thanks to Nick. Nick is also probably the resident in the office that seems to know everything that there is about the Cincinnati Reds, and I am just here for the ride for the most part and to poke fun and to have a little bit of fun. For those that are maybe tuning in for the first time, we do have some ridiculous plans this year from a Reds content perspective. And it is getting thrown out a little bit. It's kind of getting a little bump in the road here at the beginning because we're trying to figure out a way to go to Reds opening day. And if it wasn't for that, we would be 100% doing the show right after the game. So as far as tomorrow goes, we're not sure if we're going to be live directly after the game or not. It all largely depends on whether or not we decide to go. And the more and more we discussed and talked, to be quite frank, there's a better chance by the minute that we're actually going to go. But nonetheless, we'll figure that out tomorrow. But Nick, are you? I know you're excited. I don't even need to ask that question. At what point during this time frame that is close to opening day do you get excited?
I mean, I've been excited since the last out of last year.
I need a serious answer. I want to know, like, at what point does the clock turn where you're like, okay, I'm excited, because I'll give you my answer right after yours.
I was driving down today. I would say,
Yeah.
I mean, driving down today is just like, oh, wow, like we're
I-71.
Yeah, we're really close. Yeah, I live up in Cleveland. But drove down today, and yeah, I mean, that drive down, it felt like the closer I got, like once I hit Kings Island, I was like, that might be when it hit me. Kings Island, I was like, I'm in Cincinnati. I turned on 700 WLW. I'm like, all right, yeah, we're here. It's real. We're less than 24 hours away. It was like right at 4 o'clock too, so it was like
beautiful.
It was that moment.
So today I was just doing the traditional morning scroll through all the social media platforms / news agencies that I acquire in the morning, and for all intents and purposes, a random For You thing off Twitter, Chris Welsh popped up on the screen today, and he had a picture of the ballpark or something, and he said, I just can't wait for tomorrow. Something, I'm paraphrasing here. I can't wait for tomorrow. This place is going to be rocking. And I've said this a bunch, as Charlie Goldsmith is patiently waiting for me to end my story, and we'll bring him in just a moment, is this. I seen the picture, and it made me think, and it invoked the emotion of an atmosphere, which is why I love sports for the most part. I don't know. I love the game itself, but when you get yourself into an environment that is rocking, that's loud, and you got a bunch of people next to you that care just as much as you do about some little goofy game with a ball in it, for some reason that elicits some kind of emotion that is very addicting. And tomorrow, for opening day, for as many times as Great American Ballpark maybe not, I don't want to be pessimistic, but may not be rocking this year, tomorrow will be the case, which brought me some excitement. I don't know. So thanks to Chris Welsh for that. Let's bring on, I think, a friend of the show. We'll have to ask him. Maybe he's a friend of the show at this point. Maybe he's not. I don't know. He's a friend. He's somewhat of a friend of ours. Whether he reciprocates that thought, I'm not sure. Charlie Goldsmith of the Inquirer, which we realized you guys down there at the Inquirer takes this whole reporting thing pretty seriously, because it's not just yourself that is on the beat, but obviously Bobby Nightingale, who is also coming on later this show. Charlie, when does the excitement for you start? And that, you got to give me a real answer. You can't say the last out of last season like Nick.
I love probably like showing up to the first time for the complex in Goodyear and getting to, reconnect with, the players, the coaches, people you get to know who you haven't seen for a while. There's a genuine, like, good to see a moment, which is pretty cool to be a part of. And then when that comes, you're looking forward to seeing how these players perform and how this season can be, a step forward or a different year or all that kind of stuff. So I've been looking to baseball season since February.
February.
Hey, see, Charlie's a man of the people. We've said that before, though.
February. You want to start these questions? Or you want me
let's
to?
go. So, Charlie, let's talk about the roster. I was driving a lot today, so hopefully I didn't miss anything. But last roster spot, Jason Vossler sounds like he's pretty much a lock at this point. Is Stuart Fairchild probably the last guy that's getting in, or is there an 11th hour Scooter Gennett that's going to pop on the roster tomorrow?
Yeah, so Stuart Fairchild not being at the inter-squad scrimmage on Monday and then showing up today and showing up in a big league jersey wearing number 17, definitely, to me, a pretty clear sign of where that's headed. And then Vossler as well, a lot of Reds fans might not know him, but he's a left-handed hitting outfielder, very quick hands, good approach, long minor league career, had to really grind to get here. He'll probably get some regular playing time right off the bat, can play first and third. Obviously, first is an open spot right now. So, in Vossler in particular, a guy who I think we're going to see early in the season.
Charlie, I asked you this at the beginning of spring training, which when we started to we brought you on a show earlier, and you were nice enough to answer this. I wonder if, from the perspective of the clubhouse, when guys start to get sent away and the things start to narrow down and you start to fine-tune who this roster is going to be and what it looks like, and then obviously the news came out that Joey was going to start the season on the IL when maybe that was the plan all along, but for some Reds fans, you start to think maybe, just maybe, he's starting to put multiple at-bats together in some of these games. Is he going to be ready for opening day? Did the vibe change at all when he decided that he wasn't ready, or did you think that maybe everyone already knew that going in?
So I see those as separate. Like David Bell said, he didn't even think Votto playing opening day was a possibility until the middle of March, and then it really was a possibility. And for a lot of reasons we can discuss, Votto and the Reds concluded he wasn't ready, and now he's heading to a rehab assignment in AAA. I don't really feel a connection there between that and the vibe of the clubhouse. Like, everyone is very much looking forward to playing with Votto, but they also know that he's on his own timeline coming back from a major surgery. And I think where the two come together is everyone just wants like the best version of Votto when he's back. So whatever that timeline is, everyone's kind of on the same page about that.
Charlie, do you see Jose Barrero at shortstop or center field tomorrow with Votto out? Or do you just think they'll go traditional, just put Vossler at first base?
I think you'll see Jose Barrero at shortstop more than anyone else over the start of the season. There was, like, what everyone says about Jose Barrero in his spring was he got off to a bad start. And really, to be honest, for the first time, the major league coaching staff saw him turn the page from a bad start. And like they like the flight of his ball, the ball off his bat. That's different. That's a result of the swing change. He's cut down on a lot of swing and miss. He still struck out a good amount in the spring, but they felt like he had a better idea of laying off certain pitches, more competitive at-bats. I think we'll see Barrero in center, and let me make sure I'm doing this math right. When Stevenson is catching and let me say when Will Myers is not at first base and when the Reds are facing a left-handed starter. In that scenario, I think you'll see Kevin Newman at short and Jose Barrero in center field.
There's a lot of moving pieces. Like, you could really dice this lineup of 13 guys up like 50 different ways.
Which was that's a little bit of the plan, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to draft as many shortstops, I guess, as the natural position that they all claim to be, and at the end of the day, there's only one person that can play shortstop. I think they drafted shortstops for the most part because they thought they were athletic enough to be able to move and be versatile, and that's where the Reds are starting to show that plan, perhaps. Was there anything to take away? I got another question with Barrero after this question. Was there anything to take away from the scrimmages today that I assumed you seen, or did you not get a chance to see this?
No, I was there. Pretty straightforward. Luis Cessa looked ready for the start of the season, which is big. He pitched 5 innings. They then had him pitch 2 more outs after the 5th inning ended, and then they had him go to the bullpen to get some more pitches in. So that is a good sign of Luis Cessa being ready to go 5+, 6+ at the start of the season. And for someone who only threw 2 innings in the entire World Baseball Classic, that's a very important step about his readiness for his spot in the Reds rotation.
Follow up quickly on Barrero, because you obviously, Nick, brought him up. What's a fair leash in your opinion for him? Like, what's a fair timetable to give him a chance to play every day?
I think there's pressure to perform. I think that it's all relative on how well, or really in this case, how poorly he's hitting. I think that this is a good question. You're going to give me a piece of homework to do after this. What David Bell's, I don't want to say leash, but what David Bell's timetable has been for players who have really been struggling at the starts of seasons, and how quickly he's turned the page from that. I would think we get a good 3 weeks to a month from Jose Barrero, regardless of what it looks like. In a more of a good case scenario, he runs with it and takes that into the summer, and then his role kind of shifts farther when a Matt McClain or an Ellie De La Cruz comes up to the big leagues. I do get a sense that Matt McClain is closer than a lot of people are talking about right now. But I think at the very least, Jose gets a month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on McClain as well and his progress, to show what he can be as their shortstop.
Charlie, on these scrimmages, so the Reds decided to come back to Cincinnati, do inter-squad scrimmages the last couple days. I saw some other teams still played into Monday, and I think there were some teams playing on Tuesday as well. Any reason why the Reds decided to go that route? Have they said anything about that?
David Bell said it was his call, and he likes the getting settled. He felt like he learned in COVID. He said that you can get some really good work in just within your team, and these have been game days for the Reds in terms of when they show up to the ballpark, what their pregame routine is. The batting practice schedule they go through is what they'll simulate during the regular season. You can get a better sense of that when you control the factors, and instead of going to wherever to play one more game. And then as well, like he said, it's good to get unpacked. There's a human element, he said today, that we don't talk enough about, of players getting settled, especially a bunch of Reds players who are heading into their first opening day in Cincinnati. It's got to be half the team getting used to a new environment right now. And, they need to figure out what gate they enter in at the ballpark. And they've been able to get that opportunity this week at home.
For a team that's stressed, or at least I guess an organization that's stressed, that maybe the most important thing this year isn't wins and losses. And I know David Bell probably got a little more heat for that than I think that he deserved. I understand I think the undertones that he was trying to get at. But from your perspective, how important would it be from a 1 month in perspective to at least be competitive, maybe 500-ish baseball? Or do you think that that's kind of a moot point, and quote unquote, wins and losses really aren't that as big of a factor as we've said before, of guys starting to compete and grow in this major league uniform?
So, and I'll say this as someone, I'm projecting the Reds to win 68 games this year. So I'm not thinking they're going to win a lot of games. But what I've seen is one of their biggest organizational priorities is having a strong start from a wins and loss perspective. Look at basically every decision they made. The Tyler Stevenson plan, doesn't help them in the long term. In the short term, what it does is gets one of their best hitters in the lineup more consistently. Using Jose Barrero in center more is something that, again, from a long-term perspective, you can debate its usefulness, but from a short-term perspective, helps you get your best lineup on the field. Spring training, pitchers, the Reds didn't have a guy throw more than 5 innings into a game until, I think, April 29th of last season. You've had starting pitchers throwing 6 innings in spring training. Hitters took more at-bats than they'd taken in any spring trainings. David Bell, and he said this and the players have said this, David Bell has pushed them more than he has pushed any group of Reds players during spring training, during his tenure with the Reds, with the specific goal of starting faster. That's been the only reason they've done any of this. And so that shows you that is a priority. They're looking, in 2019 they started slow, in 2020 they started slow, in 2022 they started slow. They don't want to do that again, and they've made specific tangible changes to try to prevent that.
Let's hope this weekend is a good way to start. Not going to have much better pitching matchups this year than the way the Reds have started off this weekend. Charlie, you did a question and answer with Nick Kroll a couple days ago. Really great article. I know you've talked a little bit about some of this stuff. Anything else from that conversation that you think is noteworthy?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway I had was just based on how I framed and started the conversation. A lot of the early questions were about development, the farm system, the long-term vision. And Nick Kroll, really in a way that he hasn't in previous interviews, really wanted to put the focus and kind of turn the focus of the conversation to say what he is most excited about the whole organization is the young core they have in the big leagues. He said this is a group of players that need to be discussed enough more. He mentioned Spencer Steer's name multiple times as a player who was in that group, along with the obvious guys, India, the starting pitchers, Stevenson, Diaz. He says that is what has him most optimistic about the future. From my perspective, looking back, that is what the Reds probably didn't have in 2016, 17, 15 as well. They had prospects that didn't end up being stars, but they didn't have those guys you could count on in the big leagues to be a part of the next very good Reds team, and they weren't. That was a team built through free agency and trades. So he really, really stressed and shared how much, confidence he has in that part of the organization. And again, he said that's what gives him long-term confidence.
A little different question for you than the usual one probably here, Charlie, but opening day is a different beast, obviously, in Cincinnati than your traditional regular season game. And I would venture to say, and I have not been around many other organizations or at least seen many cities celebrate Reds opening day like the Reds have. And maybe I'm wondering from your perspective, in the baseball community, is it viewed upon, and I want a dead honest answer, don't pander to the fans here. Is it truly something that happens in Cincinnati that is a little bit different than the rest of the organizations, and is it something that the players from opposing teams mention?
So I'll mention a conversation today I had with Alex Young. I was talking to him, and he said originally he had a haircut scheduled for tomorrow morning, and then some of his teammates said, dude, you're not going to be able to get that haircut. You don't understand the beast that opening day is in Cincinnati. So, as far as across the league, I just don't know how many guys know about opening day in Cincinnati. But I do know that when they come here, and I've heard a bunch of examples of this with a bunch of, the first opening day guys on the Reds about, teammates, David Bell himself, making a point to stress how it's not normal, even in a get a haircut way. It's not what you're used to from across baseball. And they really, again, do stress that message heading into Thursday.
All right, Charlie. So Reds are up 1-0 through 5 innings. Hunter Green leaves the game. Who pitches the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th?
This is a great question. Where are we in the Pirates order after the 5th?
Oh.
That's an analytical man from Northwestern, folks.
I love it. Let's say top of the order. We'll start with the top of the order in the 6th.
They're up 1-0?
1-0. Hunter Green's maxed out his pitches. Top of the order's due up. Who's pitching the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th?
You see, so I'll answer your question, but I'm forgetting the left-right splits in the Pirates lineup, and this is frustrating me.
I think O'Neal Cruz is leading off. I think that's what Fangraphs had projected.
But they wouldn't have enough lefties at the top of their order,
Reynolds. Give me 1 second here, Charlie. Okay, so we're gonna say it's O'Neal Cruz, Brian Reynolds, who's a switch hitter, then Andrew McCutchen.
Right.
Then they go left, right, switch, right.
So you're probably going to want to save Reaver San Martin for that middle section where it's left, right, left. I'd probably have Farmer starting off. Okay. That would be the 6th. And San Martin will face that group next. Then that would be the 7th. Then I'll go Fernando Cruz, I think, in the 8th inning. He's a sneaky, really high leverage relief guy this year. And Alexis Diaz, I think if San Martin falters in the 7th, Alexis would be the guy who would clean that up. But I do think he's a guy in general they'd rather save for the 9th, but also be willing to bring him in earlier if needed.
All right, we got a couple chat questions. I know you love the chat, Charlie. Charlie chat. I want Nick. Well, I'm going to make it Charlie because he put Nick.
I'll be here all night.
Yeah, Nick will be here long enough. I'm going to change it. I want Charlie to give me his top 2 reasons he believes the Reds will have a better season this year than last. I don't know if that's going to be a difficult question.
I mean, they were the most hurt team in baseball last year, and it's reason 1. And reason 2 is Jonathan India and Tyler Stevenson are both really good players who are going to be a lot more valuable than they were last season.
It's really hard to start 3-22. 2 years in a row.
Let's not
poke
the bear. Yeah, let's not poke the bear. I mean, let's not poke the bear, guys. Let's keep this straight. Keep this on the straight and narrow path it is, which is optimism, and we're not going to go down the beast of poking the bear that it's impossible. Anything's possible.
It's very unlikely.
All right. Another question is, who's the most likely to enter the starting rotation if and when the fourth or fifth starter struggles or gets hurt?
Well, Luke Weaver, because he just pitched 3 innings today. I think he might have 2 more games left, and they're targeting a mid to late April return, so that will be pretty quick. I do think if an injury happened today, right now, Chase Anderson would be the first guy up.
So you're kind of thinking that Connor Overton he's got to really impress probably these first 2 starts, or it'll be Luke Weaver and maybe Overton goes to the bullpen or gets sent to AAA?
I think he's the 5th starter right now, even though he is the 4th starter right now in the rotation. I mean, it's a numbers game. I think Luke will get a spot in the Reds rotation. Overton has a lot to prove. I do think theoretically, if we're going down that route, they really value starting pitching depth, and they would send Overton to AAA to be starting pitching depth.
Maybe this is a bad question, but for as much as you had mentioned that David Bell wants to get off to a good start, the way that the schedule lays out, maybe you know where I'm going with this, and I don't know if it's fair to ask for him to do this regardless, but the way the schedule lays out, you could get away with not throwing maybe said 5th starter. Is that ever even a topic of conversation, or is this just one of those years where we want those young guys to get as much rest as they possibly can before throwing them again?
I do know that there was never a consideration for using the off day to just do a 4-man rotation early on. I know that's what their plan has always been. As for reasons, it probably is about spacing out and not compressing the schedules early in the season for Green, Ashcraft, Lodolo. That probably makes the most sense.
Fair. Any final questions? Nick?
I think we know it. Man, Charlie, you're the best. Really do appreciate you coming on the podcast and on the live show. Looking forward to all your coverage. You do great work for the Cincinnati Enquirer.
That you do. We appreciate you coming on here, taking up your valuable time, and more importantly, your love for the chat. It doesn't go unnoticed. People in the chat are appreciative, and who knows? Maybe we can find a nickname out there. Maybe it's the Charlie Chat Goldsmith. I'm not sure. We'll come up with something better than that, I promise, by the next time you come on. But I'll who knows? Maybe we even get you an intro with some Charlie Chat Goldsmith. What do you think about that?
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
All right. See you, Charlie. All right, Nick. What about that? I got mixed up there for what, just a half a second on the fact that I thought they were asking Charlie a question, and there I just read the fact that they were asking you a question. Do you want to answer that question this early in the show, or do you want to save it?
We can save it. I think Tom's ready to go.
Tom's ready to go, and Casey's getting him ready to go right now. And he's ready to go. Let's get him in here. Why not? None other than Tim Nichols, the Dayton Dragons. Tom, excuse me. I'm sorry, Tom.
We're off to a rough start.
Or off to a bad start. It wouldn't be. Listen, hopefully the Reds get off to a better start than what I just did. However, none other than Tom Nichols, the Dayton Dragons play-by-play man. And I've been told pretty much everything else. Is that accurate or not?
Yes, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder on that one. I don't know. I do a lot of play-by-play. That's all I can promise.
All right. Well, you've obviously been a fan of the Reds, and you've been a part of the organization, if you will, just up the road in Dayton, one of the better, if not the best, minor league stadiums that there is, not only in this region but the entire country. One in which is proudly boasts and holds a number of sellout records in a row. I have not been privy enough. I lived actually right up in Dayton for 10 years and went to that ballpark many, many times. And I should probably know this, but is the sellout officially done? Is that continuing going? Where are we at on the sellout? Because there for a while, that was a big, big, proud thing that the Dayton Dragons boasted about.
Yes, it's actually the longest sellout streak in the history of sports in North America, and it is still, at this point, considered active. It's 1,441 consecutive games. That goes back to the 2000 season, actually the first game ever played in the ballpark. And we paused it in 2021 when we had 30% capacity. So there was literally no way to even consider it as a sellout. And then we sold out every game in 2022. So we are hoping to keep it going this year. We're struggling a little bit right now with some season ticket drops from businesses. And we worked hard to try to get it going again. And opening day is April the 11th, and if things go well, we'll be able to keep that sellout streak going, continue in the future as far as we can.
All right, well, we'll start rallying the troops. Start rallying the troops to try to make sure we keep that record alive. Kirby, you want to start with any questions that you might have for Tom?
Well, you're going to have some good talent there this year. Edwin Arroyo, he's going to start the year, you suspect, with Dayton, correct?
Absolutely. He'll be our shortstop. It's kind of interesting when you had Ellie De La Cruz, it's hard for anyone else to compare. But if you look at our history, I believe I figured the other day that Arroyo will be the 10th player in Dragons history, and this will be our 23rd year, the 10th player that has been rated by Baseball America as a Reds top 3 prospect. Some of the others, Jay Bruce, Homer Bailey, Adam Dunn, Billy Hamilton, Hunter Green. Those are some of the players that would be in that list of being top 3. He, on most lists right now, is number 3 behind number 1 is De La Cruz, of course, and Noelvi Marte is at number 2 on most lists, and Arroyo is at number 3. Considered by most to be the best defensive shortstop of the bushel of shortstops they have, with De La Cruz, Matt McLean. Marte now looks like he's a third baseman. So you've got several players at that position, many of them acquired within the last 12 months in trades. And Arroyo considered to be the guy, with all the other guys, you hear, well, what position will he move to? Because there's some thought that many of those guys at some point could play another position, whether McLean, whether it's second base, again, Marte to third base, De La Cruz, some would wonder. I think he'd be a great third baseman. Some have even talked about center field, but Arroyo, nobody's really talked about him moving to a new position at all. So he is a switch hitter like De La Cruz. He hit very well last season as a low A player, and this would be a big year for him. As a high A player, we'll see how he performs.
Well, I'm looking forward. Last year when he came over, he played in Daytona, which doesn't have a lot of games on TV, but the Dragons, I believe everyone in your league, are the captains now on TV as well?
They are. The captains, Lake County captains up in the Cleveland area, Guardians Farm Club. They were the last holdout, and they do have TV coverage this year for all of their home games. So we'll have all 132 available.
That's great. I live in Lake County. That's my county, so I'll be there. That's opening weekend, right? You guys open there?
April the 6th, yes. That'll be a 3-game series, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We have off day on Easter, and then our Mondays are always off days. That's the way the schedule's drawn up now, 6 days a week, Tuesday through Sunday. With Easter this year on a Sunday there, we have double off days, and then we'll open up on the road against Lake County the 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then at home on the 11th against the Dodgers affiliate, the Great Lakes Loons.
Tom, I know guys probably pepper you all the time about prospects because you get to watch them on a day-in, day-out basis. But maybe you get to, maybe you don't. I assume the Cincinnati Reds, there's not as much talk about them on your radar as much as maybe you'd like. I assume that you've been to Reds opening day. For a guy like Nick, who just told me, for as big of a fan as he is, not that I hope I'm not outing you for saying this.
You can help me.
But he's not been to Reds opening day at Great American Ballpark. Have you been to Reds opening day? If so, could you share your memories of that and why you think it's special?
For a long time, it was the absolute opening day for Major League Baseball. So the season actually began, and boy, over the years, there have been so many great opening day games. I can think back to the early years of the Big Red Machine in the 70s. And they actually won a game. It might have been like 1975. They won a game of a wild pitch on opening day. It's like a 14-inning game on opening day, which is the players aren't in favor of playing 14 innings on opening day. And with the ghost runner rule now, or free runner rule as I call it, it's probably not going to ever happen again as long as that rule is in place. That was a big one. I think the Joe Randa home run, the walk-off homer. And their catcher, Ramon Hernandez, I think, hit a walk-off homer about 2009, maybe, somewhere in that range. Those were big moments. you want to get off to a good start. So for David Bell and company, you'd like to get off to a good start, not be climbing out of a hole like you were last season. So for the players, they've been in spring training for a month, and it's a chance to get into a whole new, different environment and play in front of a big crowd. And the intensity level and the speed of the game, obviously, is much different. And I think this year is going to be a unique opening day for sure because of all the new rules the pitch timer. That's number one. That'll be the one that has the biggest impact. Yep. But also, we'll see what kind of an impact the new defensive positioning rules have at the major league level. I think it'll have a bigger impact in the major leagues than it had in the minor leagues last year, where minor league players really weren't willing to change their approach much from the previous year. And in the spring games we saw with the Reds this season, you just saw one line drive through the middle, base hit after another, just one after another. And that had almost been removed from the game because guys were convinced, if I don't hit the ball out of the ballpark, I can't get a hit. And it changed the approach offensively. I hated it. And the number of strikeouts, of course, just went sky high. And now you see guys with different approaches trying to hit line drives, protect with 2 strikes. And we'll see, I think, at the major league level, that could have a big impact. And then the running game, and part of that reflects off of the pitch timer as well, because you can only have, really, the rule is the 3rd throw to first base. If you don't pick the guy off, it's a balk. So there's never going to be 3 throws. So 2 is the limit. And really, 1 is almost the limit because if you throw over there twice, he knows you can't throw over again, and he's going to be leaning and running. So really, one throw is about what you're going to get. And so the base stealers know that. It opens up another part of the game. It increases the value of team speed and taking the extra base. And I think all those things, in my opinion at least, are positive changes for the game going forward.
So, Tom, you got a lot of the pitch clock last year. Talk to us about the adjustment period last year in the minor leagues and maybe how you think it'll translate this year in the big leagues.
You saw the spring training games, and it's a whole different game. For us, we started the season last year with a 10-day trial period where the clock was running, but the umpires really weren't calling it very consistently at all. And so my impression at the end of that 10 days was this isn't going to do anything. They're not calling it. If you don't enforce the rule, it's not going to have any effect. But then at the end of 10 days, immediately it started getting enforced strictly. And honestly, I think in our league at least, you saw it called most frequently into innings. In other words, the starting pitcher or the pitcher in the game at the time, he's got, I think it's like 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and he was not making that. So you'd see ball 1 called entering an inning. The very first batter of the inning would start off with ball 1. You would see that occasionally. You wouldn't see it as much within a count. You would see it as much on the hitter as you would the pitcher, quite honestly. So those were all impressions we took after the first year. Now, here's one thing to consider, Nick, that I think is interesting. We had one particular pitcher in our league last year. His name was Lyle Luckhaupt. He was a Dodgers prospect with the Great Lakes Loons, and he did not have great stuff. So he tried to use the pitch timer as a weapon. He had one little trick. Once you figured it out, you kind of knew what was coming, but until that point, he could really use it. And that was, he would get into a 2-strike situation with a hitter, and from his side of things, preferably the hitter has already, by the time he gets to 2 strikes, he's already used up his 1 free step out of the box. You can only step out 1 time. So he's used that up. So he gets into a 2-strike situation, preferably with maybe men on base, if you're trying to get out of a jam, and the pitcher takes his sign and just immediately comes to a set position as soon as the pitch clock is starting. So he just stands there, still as a statue, as the pitch clock is slowly winding down. And what is a hitter, what are his instincts when the pitcher stands there for 8-10 seconds and does nothing, what's the hitter's instinct? Step out of the box again. That's strike 3. He's out. The inning's over. We saw it happen over and over. Eventually, guys could figure it out, but again, it's like your competitive instinct kicks in. You're standing there holding the bat for 8-10 seconds. You back out of the box and ask for time, and the umpire says that's strike 3. So guys will try to figure these things out. The smart ones will, especially this was a guy who needed something like that because he didn't have a 97 or 98 mile an hour fastball, and he figured out an advantage, and that's what the game is all about really. Is doesn't matter how you get an out. It's whether you can figure out how to work an advantage on the opposition and get out of an inning without giving up runs.
Sounds like you're obviously in favor of many of the rule changes that have been implemented at the major league level. You've seen them play out at the minor league level, obviously a few years prior to them strictly implementing it at the major league level. Do you feel like that? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like that has brought back some of the quote unquote small ball that's gone missing from this game for a few years? And quite frankly, many would say or argue that perhaps it brought some boring nature to the game. And is that maybe the biggest piece that you feel like the rule changes will actually do for the game, or did I miss you there?
That will be a big piece. I mean, that you what you just talked about is huge, and it'll become, I think, noticeable. Again, I think more at the major league level than minor league. Minor league guys are locked into an approach that they've been taught, and to get them to actually think about changing it is more than a 1-year process. Major league guys are more, I think, willing to look for adjustments that they might make, and that's why you saw so many line drive base hits in spring training. But don't also overlook the impact of the pitch timer just in terms of the pace of the game itself. And I do go back to what you just said as a major improvement. It got to where, I mean, the 2020 Reds club, which was a good team with Castellanos. I mean, he had as good a year as I've seen probably since George Foster, maybe. You'd have to go back a ways. But that was a style of play I particularly wasn't a big fan of. It was almost like a slow pitch softball. Just stand up there and take a big uppercut swing and try to hit the ball to the fence. And, you know, I think most fans like to see some action on the field. And running game, athletic ability becomes big, and that'll be it. But again, you're going to see a quicker pace. And hopefully, I think as time goes on, you won't notice it as much. I hope they don't show the pitch clock on the TV screen, because then you're just looking at that. I hope they don't show it. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I hope they don't. So as a fan, I mean, I had whole games last year where I never looked at the pitch clock one time over a 9-inning game. But then you look at your watch at the end of the game, and it says 9:30 instead of 10:15. And you say, okay, I didn't really notice that, but they took 45 minutes of pure dead time out of the game. The number of pitches thrown doesn't change any. It's the same number of pitches, but yet it's going to be, 25, 30 minutes on average less than what you've seen in the past. And that's all just time taken out of a guy stepping out and readjusting his batting glove after every pitch, or listening to his walk-up song, or, the pitcher stepping off to take the sign 3 or 4 times. That's going to become an art form, is can I get the sign within the allotted number? You can't stand out there and shake the guy off 4 times and then step off the rubber and then go through the signs again. It's not going to be part of the game anymore. It's as if, now I use this analogy with Lance McAllister. It's as if every pitcher is Tom Browning. In other words, the late Tom Browning, he was a quick worker. Nobody ever complained about it. They just said he's a quick worker. Everybody becomes that kind of a pitcher. It's not really enough to say that it's a whole different element. It's just eliminating the slow workers toward the quick workers.
You bring that up, and Joey Votto was talking about the idea of there being friendly debates inside the locker room on which of the 3 guys they thought were going to be the best of the 3, and obviously he never really gave an answer, but behind closed doors, I'm sure they all have their own opinions of who that may be. I guess the one thing that he had mentioned in that, and I want to bring up to you and what your thought on this would be, or if you think that it would be true, is he said he felt like a lot of guys liked playing behind Ashcraft because of the fact that the ball was put in play and that there was a little bit of a pace to it, and then there wasn't just, a strikeout a whole side of the inning, and then you just go out there and you feel like you're standing around, you're not doing anything. Do you think with the pitch clock that fielding percentages may or may not go up? Am I looking too far into that? Did you see maybe their opportunity of fielding percentages being a lot higher with guys feeling like the game's moving at a better pace?
Absolutely. And the game is just a better game. Guys are more alert. They're not on their heels. I mean, ask a guy to stand out in left field for 15, 18 minutes and continue to have that same competitive edge. And it's just not there. And there's an old saying in baseball, you lose your focus for a second and the ball will find you. You know what I'm saying? The ball will find you. You lose your focus. That's why professional baseball defensively is so, and we get it at the single A level, guys. People will say, well, I see errors here sometimes that I'm not used to seeing, maybe even at the college level. And I say, well, the difference is you're asking a guy to go out there and play every single night for 9 innings, and you lose your focus for an instant, and the ball finds you, and all of a sudden you got an error. And that might only happen a couple of times a week, but 2 times a week, and it adds up. So, those 3 guys you just mentioned, all 3 of those guys came through Dayton, so I saw them all. They're all very different. Lodolo is probably of the 3 the best quote-unquote pitcher, in that he's got quality secondary pitches that are going to be very, very hard to hit if he throws them for strikes. Green, of course, is the hardest thrower and has the best arm. Maybe the hardest throwing starter. I might not be going too far on this, but maybe the hardest throwing starter in baseball history. There have been relievers, Aroldis Chapman being the biggest name, but do that over 6, 7 innings, it's probably not something we've seen too many times. A guy throwing 100. He threw 102 in Dayton, topped out at 102. I remember, I've talked about this before, his very first game in Dayton, April of 2018, and I was a little bit skeptical of some of the things I'd heard in spring training, simply because it heard it so many times before. So-and-so hit X velocity level in spring training in Arizona, and then you get him, and it wouldn't be anywhere close to what you heard. And so I thought, how hard is Green's pitch going to be in the first inning? And I told people, I'm going to guess it's going to be probably about 94, 95, based on what we've heard and really what we hear from Arizona compared to how it translates to a cold April night in Dayton, Ohio. Okay? So he throws his first pitch, and I look up there, and it says 100 on the board, 100. And eventually he hit 102, which broke the stadium record that had been set by Aroldis Chapman on a rehab assignment. And then Ashcraft is one of the most interesting guys I can ever remember seeing, because he's got a 99 mile an hour 2-seamer, unheard of. So he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. But the key for him is going to be secondary pitches. And I really like what I'm hearing about this slider that he's added, because if he can command that slider and it's a quality pitch, it's going to make that 99 mile an hour 2-seam fastball so much more effective. And you'll start seeing swings and misses on that pitch that in 2022, you saw a lot of weak ground balls. And I mean, his strikeout numbers weren't particularly impressive. You saw weakly hit fly balls, but you didn't see a lot of strikeouts with Ashcraft. You will start to see that if the secondary pitch improves, because the fastball then will become a pitch that guys can't catch up to.
All right, Tom, I'm going to leave you on this. Again, I'm going to maybe put you on the spot, fair or unfair. The Reds win how many games this year?
Okay, well, that's a good question. I'll say I'm going to optimistically say 75. For that to happen, they really need to stay healthy. they lose one or more of Ashcraft, Green, Lodolo, you got major problems because the 4 and 5 spots right now in the rotation are big question marks. Then you start hearing talk about, do we call up Andrew Abbott, Connor Phillips, Joe Boyle, big arms in the minor leagues. I mean, guys with big time arms. Those 3 guys I just mentioned are not just young, but they are talented young guys with big league stuff. And so we will, I'm sure at some point, start hearing, well, when will they call these guys up? And some of those guys are going to start in AA, but they may not be there for too long. And it'll be really interesting for me to go back to your question. What's more important to me, and I know most fans would agree with this, but they may not be saying it right now. What's more important to me is it's not so much how many games they win this year, it's how far along De La Cruz, Lodolo, Green, Ashcraft, Encarnacion Strand, Spencer Steer. Can Nick Senzel bounce back? Because I still like Senzel. A lot of people have given up on him. I haven't. I saw him in the minor leagues when he was at his best. So we'll see. And then you got the next group right behind them, Marte. You've got McLean and a whole group of guys. And then I know you need to get to the next person, but there's a whole nother group behind them that are guys that are at one point really highly regarded, but need to jump back into the mix, like Reese Hines, Austin Hendrick, Tyler Callahan. These guys are all at one point like top 10 prospects who've fallen a little bit behind, but still have the talent to get back. So those are the things I'll be looking for this year.
All right, Tom, and I didn't forget. We're going to try to rally the troops and get some people to buy some tickets up there for the Dayton Dragons and keep that streak alive. So thank you for coming on here. I know that we haven't obviously personally met. Your friends here with Nick, and I promise I'll make up the fact that I called you Tim.
That's all right. That's all right. Maybe next time you can call me that again, and we'll just keep it going that way. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks, Tom. Nice to see you again.
All right.
Tom's the best.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's one of those things where when he was talking there for a little while, I was wondering if when he was talking about the pitch clock, one thing as an infielder, and I'm not here to say that I played anywhere near the level of Major League Baseball because I didn't, but I always felt like if there was a little bit of flow to the game, it was just a lot easier to play the defensive position wherever you're at. And for me, it was shortstop, but it was just so much easier to run out there every inning and to stay engaged when guys were throwing strikes and there was action. Even if the ball wasn't hit to you, you still felt like there was just something different about either one of two things: a guy striking everybody out and or a guy walking everybody. Both of those things are not all that great for at least me as a defensive infielder. I couldn't hit, but I could play defense. So that's the only thing I hang my hat on.
I think there's going to be a lot of people, like Tom said, people that are going to go to a game this year, and they're not going to even realize the pitch clock is there, especially the people in person. I think it's going to be more noticeable on TV, but I think when you're there in person, I think you're going to be like, oh, I've only been here an hour and a half, and it's the top of the 7th. I had the exact same thought the first minor league game I went to last year, just like Tom said. I couldn't believe it. And funny enough, the guy we're bringing on,
no doubt,
I was at the game with completely by accident. Dayton Dragons at the Lake County Captains. Our guy Joel Luckhaupt just happened to be there same time as me, and we sat next to each other and hung out during the game. We both thought the same thing. So, full circle here. No doubt, and we'll bring Joel on right now. Joel, first of all, thank you for coming on. And I know we haven't personally met. You're friends of Nick here. I don't know if you caught much of our last conversation. You are with Bally here. You're a part of that broadcast crew and being a statistician. He brought up the point Tom did of the pitch clock being on screen. Would you be hurting anybody, or would you be getting yourself in trouble by sharing whether or not if you know if the pitch clock will be on the screen or not?
That's above my pay grade, honestly. I don't know. That is not a decision that I am privy to. I know during the spring training games they put it up on there every once in a while. I would suspect that it's going to be on screen at least early in the year because it's new. It's going to be something that people are going to be interested in timing wise and learning that rhythm. As Nick mentioned, we were at a game together, again, just coincidentally. And at the end of the game, like we were both like, that was like a 2-hour game. And we didn't even realize, I don't think we ever even talked about the pitch clock until about the 7th or 8th inning. Once you get into the rhythm of it, I think you just forget about it.
Yeah, well, tomorrow will be the first time at a big league level. Well, not just in Cincinnati, but throughout the country. But more importantly, for what we care about in Cincinnati, the pitch clock. Do you know? And maybe I'm asking questions that are dumb right now. I'm just figured that maybe you're more privy than I am. Do you know if there's a multitude of pitch clocks and where they are located in the stadium yet, or is that something that you're not familiar with yet?
I mean, I haven't been down there yet, but as I recall, there are 2 on either side of home plate, and then 1 out in center field, maybe.
Okay.
Around that area, because the batter needs to be able to know. The batter's got a responsibility to the clock. He has to be in position to hit with 8 seconds remaining, I believe. And then I think they have 2 behind home plate, because if you have a right-handed or a left-handed pitcher, they want to make sure it's in the line of sight of the pitcher.
Right.
I don't think it'll be visible on the screen directly. They're offset from right behind home plate, I believe.
So, Joel, tell the folks what you do during a game. I'm guessing the pitch clock might make your job a little more challenging, having to be a little faster with the clicks. Tell people what you do during the game and how you help out the broadcast.
So my job is twofold. First thing I do is the less interesting thing, I would say, is I am the person that lets the people down in the truck know where the base runners are, where if there's a pinch runner or pinch hitter, things like that, the people in the truck can only see what is on camera. And so I, up in my perch, I'm able to communicate down to the truck and tell them, hey, runners at first and third, we got a pinch hitter coming up, that kind of stuff. The other thing I do is I give notes to the announcers to try to make sure, if there's something interesting happening in the game that maybe they're not necessarily following, that they are aware of it. Or if there's a stat that they just need looked up that they don't have time to look up because they're too busy talking about the game. I had not actually, Nick, considered the fact that the pitch clock is going to make it harder for me to chime in. But frankly, having worked with John Sadak for the last 2 years, it's already been hard enough for me to chime in. The guy's already got a mind full of facts and knowledge that getting my interesting little tidbits squeezed in there has been a little more of a challenge the last couple of years. It's a fun challenge, but it has been a little more of a challenge.
Did they add the base runners gig just because of Sadak, or was that before that?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Did they add your duty of having to see where the base runners are?
Oh, that's always part of the job. What's funny is when there's like a national broadcast, they actually have 2 different people. They split that job into 2 different people, which makes me feel really important. That during an everyday game, I can handle both of them. So,
this is more maybe of an obscure question. Certainly one that probably maybe change from person to person based off of each one that does the job. But what do you consider a golden stat or a great stat when you see one? Is there one certain thing that you say, this is when I know I got something good?
What I like personally for me is when I find something that isn't precisely within the flow of the game that, maybe I like the stuff that isn't so obvious. A guy hits 4 home runs in a game. That's pretty obvious. Most people can find that kind of stuff. I like the stuff that it's like, I always people regularly ask me, well, what's your favorite stat you ever found? And there was a game in 2011 that Miguel Cairo pinch hit and walked on a 3-2 count. And then he batted again later in the inning and struck out on a 3-2 count. But the funny thing is about those 2 at-bats or plate appearances is he never once swung at a pitch. So he saw 12 pitches in the inning and never swung. And I I was it wasn't noticed on the broadcast, but I noticed it when it happened, and researched and found that was actually the most pitches a player that we know of, which goes back to 1988. The most pitches a player had ever seen in an inning without swinging at a single pitch. And so, like, that kind of stuff, those little facts, like, that are maybe a little more of a struggle to find, is the kind of things that I like.
Well, that begs the question then, and it also coincides with the question that was in the chat. It says, how do you pull up these obscure stats so quickly? Are you some Excel wizard, or what do you have at your disposal that maybe others don't have, or is it just something that you've created?
I've got several databases that I have access to, one of which is a public retro sheet, which is an amazing organization. They have done play-by-play data for as many games as we have the play-by-play data known in history, going all the way back to 1901. So, I've got that data in a database on my computer. My background was database programming, so I have some skills there that make it a little easier for me to find little nuggets out of there. I also, use Baseball Reference. I use a tool that we have called Sport Radar. And usually between the three of those things, I'm able to find stuff. So I'm pretty good at searching for that kind of stuff. I'm pretty good at writing good Google queries. And then the hardest skill for me, and the hardest skill I think of the job, is noticing the patterns, noticing the events when they happen, and recognizing that something interesting has happened to the point where it's worth looking up. Because if I spent every time a guy batted, and if I had tried to look up every time a guy, what's he hit with runners at first and second, that's a giant waste of time. For one, it's not all that interesting, but for two, it's takes away from finding those little those things that happen in the game that I find really interesting.
All right, well, Joel, I want to give you a chance to talk about the team, because I know that you, long before your gig with Bally, you're a fan of the Cincinnati Reds. So I know last year when we were at that game together, we talked a lot about the Reds were in the process of about to trade Luis Castillo. Since then, what's your overall thoughts on kind of what's happened and then kind of going into this year?
What's really striking me about this team is the lack of experience that we're going into this season with. I think what surprised me about it is because you think, well, they've got Joey Votto and Will Myers and Kirk Casale, and so they're not completely inexperienced. Well, I mean, obviously Joey's not going to start the season, and I happened to just look today. I think they've only got 4 guys that are going to start on the opening day roster with 1,000 career plate appearances, which isn't very much. I mean, Jonathan India is one of them. So it's not like they have a ton of experience on the team in terms of just hitting experience. Obviously, the pitching rotation is very young. It's possibly one of the young. I mean, it's one of the most inexperienced starting rotations to start a season for the Reds ever. The bullpen is fairly young, although it has a little more experience within the bullpen than maybe the other roles. But so that leaves you kind of you can start convincing yourself, well, maybe they're going to surprise people. Maybe they're going to do something that you don't expect. I'm not sure if I believe that, but it allows you that because you have all these guys that were like, well, maybe this guy will break out. You hear that a lot about somebody like Will Benson, who is an intriguing prospect. Maybe he turns into something a little more than what you expect. I still think until these super athlete guys that we've got, the Ellie De La Cruz and Noel V. Marte, and those guys start coming up, I think it's going to be a little bit of a slow burn, and we're not going to see that excitement probably until those guys start playing.
I was going to ask, that was my next question, is when you had mentioned the inexperience, is it relatively refreshing to sit up there and see the idea of many up and newcomers, if you will? And I'm not here to say that guys that have careers that are on the back end don't provide some value. But it seemed like there for a minute, the Reds opening day lineup had, for lack of a better term, retread guys, and there wasn't really any kind of, I don't want to say hope or optimism, but there wasn't a lot of optimism for a ceiling of something we might not come to expect and or see. So when you I think you answered a little bit at the end, but is that probably the thing that you're most looking forward to this year? Is that of just the abyss of the unknown?
I tell you what, it's kind of funny because I really think that it makes my job a lot harder, because it's a lot better when a guy has a back of the baseball card. It just makes things a lot easier. So Then I'm trying to find, well, when was the last time a guy came up and did this or that or whatever? And those can be interesting, but it's always, during the last rebuild, always nice to have the reliable Joey Votto to find stuff to pull from. So yes, as a fan, I think it's going to be more interesting to see the young guys come up and try to perform. And there's going to be struggles, and there's going to be exciting plays, and there's going to be things we haven't seen in a long time and that kind of stuff. I'm really looking forward to seeing the big three in the rotation and see how they grow and how they develop. But, if I'm trying to do my job and if I'm trying to make my job interesting, it would be better if they were just a good team with a lot of good players.
Well, you mean to tell me that system that you were just talking about that dates back to 1905, they don't do like high school stats or anything like that for you?
No. It's all, I don't even have a minor league database, so it's hard to, like, when Ellie does that kind of crazy stuff in the minors that he did last year, it's like, well, I'll have to rely on somebody else to get that information.
All right, fair enough.
So Joel was disappointed when Hunter Strickland didn't make the bullpen, right? Is that what you're saying?
Next question.
It's not a fair question. A little.
At the very least, Hunter Strickland will have to abide by the rules of the pitch clock, just like everybody else.
Joel, any records that you've been kind of looking at? I know there's not a whole lot of players that are obviously have a lot of service time, but any records as you've been kind of digging into this season that are being chased? Maybe some Votto when he comes back.
I mean, obviously Votto, when he comes back, is going to be still playing up to move up the all-time leaderboards for the team. I don't have any off the top of my head right now. I haven't. I'll be honest. I've kind of ignored Votto in doing my prep going into the season because I know I have some time on him. It's. I think the more interesting stuff is. We're going to start seeing like Lodolo and Lodolo specifically being a left-handed pitcher will give us some interesting things that we haven't seen in a while, because the Reds really haven't had a lot of left-handed pitching that's been successful over the past, couple decades. And then you'll see things like Hunter Green's probably going to move up quickly up the strikeout list for guys that are both his age as well as his lack of experience.
Well, I was going to ask you the same parting question I've asked the previous guests, whether it's fair or unfair putting you on the spot. I know you heard me ask the question. Do you want to take a stab at how many wins the Cincinnati Reds have by the end of the year?
I think I put them at around 72 or so. I think the difference, they plus or minus 5 on either end of that number. Probably more likely to be -5, but I think the big difference this year compared to last year is I think they're going to be an exciting, more fun team to watch. It's just that young teams can come out and surprise you, but they can also give you a lot of headaches if they aren't able to, be stable coming in. So 70-ish, 72, somewhere around there.
All right, 72. I'm holding them 72.
That's fine.
Joe, one last question for you from me. What's your opening day look like? What do you? How does that walk us through Joel's opening day?
I have the most boring opening day of anybody because I have to be at the stadium at about 1 o'clock. I'll probably get down there more around noon just so that I can find some parking, and then I'll sit and do my prep like I usually do. My opening day is not really any different. In fact, it's really not as far as I do go, it's just another game for me. It doesn't, really change all that much, except that I get to use stats that are, most consecutive opening days and what have they done on opening day and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it's really not that different.
You got a favorite opening day memory?
The first opening day I ever worked was 2011 when Ramon Hernandez hit the home run. So that was pretty cool. It's kind of been opening day has kind of been a letdown since then, really. There's still wins, but
you just wait till tomorrow, Joel. You just wait till tomorrow.
Yeah. When you walk it off when you're down by, what were they, down by 2 or 3 at that point? That's pretty cool.
That was a cold day too. It was just kind of like a miserable day at the ballpark.
Yeah, I did not realize that when it's cold outside, going into that game, when I didn't realize when it's cold outside, it's cold in the booth because we have the windows open. And I was frozen from head to toe that game. That was the coldest game I've ever worked because I didn't realize it was going to be cold, so I didn't dress for it.
I never even thought of that. So is it open air? Or is
we always have the windows open because we have a camera in our booth. And so they have to be able to have the windows open. So like the radio booth will close. They'll close the windows if it's cold. The press box, they'll close the windows if it's cold, but we always have to have the windows open. So when it's cold outside, we feel it in the booth.
Well, Bryce, I just want to let you know in the chat, Bryce Spalding says Joel is the reason that I got into advanced numbers. So hopefully when you lay your head down tonight, that makes you feel good.
I'm sorry, Bryce.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. We didn't want to hold you up too long. I know you got a busy day tomorrow, and maybe, hopefully, you'll be a friend of the show. We'll have you back another time, another day. And
anytime, guys.
You be safe and enjoy your day tomorrow. Should be good
weather.
Thank
you too. Yeah, hopefully. It won't be as cold as it was in 2011, that's for sure.
All right. Take care, Joel.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Well, that's cool. What a guy. I'm trying not to look at you because I know that inevitably on the screen it's going to be really weird if I do that. Next guest, though, that we have, and we're just rifling through these left and right, is a special one. This guy played for 8 seasons with your Cincinnati Reds, understands opening day just as well as about as anybody, was an all-star for your Cincinnati Reds. Devin Mesoraco. Devin, I checked the internet, and as the internet serves me correctly, you are still in baseball with the Pitt Panthers. Is that accurate?
That's true, yeah.
How's that going? We'll start with that. Are you enjoying that, being around the game? Did the young kids take advice? Do you have to remind them what you used to do from time to time? What's that look like?
Yeah, I love it. So it's been a really good fit. Gets me out of the house a little bit here, keeps me busy. I have some good information that I can share with those guys. And, in college, they haven't been around that many guys that played in the big leagues, right, or that has had success that I have. So they listen to basically everything that I say, so it works out pretty good. And I give some good information and they listen very well. So, yeah, it's a good fit.
All right, I'll take the softball question from the get-go and let Nick try to ask you some more difficult questions perhaps. But we always hear around Cincinnati these parts about how special opening day is, and maybe it's different than the rest of the country. For a guy that that not only was a part of it, but obviously fraternized, I'm sure, with many players throughout the league. And I want an honest answer. This isn't just pandering to Cincinnati Reds fans, perhaps. Is there a different sense when you're playing for the Cincinnati Reds on opening day versus any other time of your career?
I think no, probably not. I think that you spend so much time in the off season getting ready. You spend so much time kind of hyping up that moment. Everybody's excited for opening day. Everybody loves opening day. I think that portion of it, and also as a player, you don't necessarily get to take part in the festivities. I think they have 1 or 2 starters that do the parade and see what everything is going on around town. But as a player, you're kind of you got to go to the field and prepare for the game kind of before all that stuff gets started. So really, you don't get to experience it other than like the buzz that you get when you walk out on the field to kind of get things going. But it is almost a normal day for a player, just as far as showing up, getting your work in, preparing for the game, studying the reports, watching the opposing pitcher. But then as soon as you walk out there kind of for warm-ups and everything, you get that buzz and it's kind of like, all right, yeah, this is a little bit different. This is pretty cool.
Devin, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on Tyler Stevenson. Pretty good start, a really good start to his big league career as he's approaching his, I guess, third full season. What's your thoughts on Stevenson?
Yeah, I think he's going to be awesome. I think that there's still some parts of his game that Tyler can get better at. There's still some things that he will get better at. You know, I think that you've seen Tyler kind of play here, and he's been able to use the whole field, hit a lot of line drives, and he hasn't necessarily gotten into kind of the raw power that he has. So I certainly think that that's something that he's such a big dude and strong guy, whether it's a swing adjustment or just knowing the league a bit better, learning when to take some chances. I think that's certainly because he has plenty of power. I've seen him hit BP. He was in the organization while I was still there, and man, you know, just a big dude. So that'll be certainly interesting to watch behind the plate. You know, I think he has a really strong arm, good receiver, works well with the pitcher. So, yeah, I mean, the sky is the limit, really, right? I think that it's just a matter of him getting some reps, staying healthy, and he's going to be a really, really good foundational player for the team.
You mentioned staying healthy. Obviously, it's an incredibly difficult thing to do when you have to play as many games as you do at the major league level. And Tyler has been steadfast in saying that he wants to remain a catcher, doesn't want to move positions, but there's obviously been chatter around not only maybe the organization, but around the city and the buzz of the city with some of the injuries that have happened to him and the concern for him more than anything with the concussions. When you're a catcher, how difficult is it do you think it's even possible to see beyond the idea of maybe moving a position, or do you think once you're a catcher, there's really no turning back and it's basically hell to have to freeze over for somebody to drag you outside of that position?
I think as a catcher, you take a lot of pride in all the different aspects of the game that you can help out, right? You take pride in working with the pitchers. You take pride in calling the game. You take pride in your blocking and your throwing, and by all accounts, you know, I think that Tyler excels in all those aspects of the game. So for somebody to say that they want him to go play another position so that they can just use his bat, well, you know, he's put all this time and effort and has the ability to do all these other things. It seems like, you know, a little bit of a waste to kind of go in that direction. So I tend to agree with Tyler that, like, hey, you know, I'm a catcher. I can do it. You know, I know that the concussions are worrisome to some people, and I'm sure worrisome to Tyler. Hopefully that isn't something that happens here in the future. Hopefully they've, you know, got a better helmet or something that can help him out. But the other injuries that he's have kind of been just here or there, right, with the foul tip and things of that nature. Hopefully he can not have those issues moving forward and be a healthy and be a really good catcher for the team. I think that, you know, you take pride in that position, and I certainly think that he does as well.
So, Devin, you took a massive leap between your 2013 and 2014 seasons when you became an All-Star. Brandon in the chat says it was one of his favorite all-time seasons of any Reds player was your 2014 season. Talk to us about what that season was like and leading up to that kind of, I guess, breakout season for you.
Yeah, so 2013 off season there, they ended up trading Ryan Hannigan, who was my buddy and helped me out a whole lot there behind the plate as far as game calling and working with the pitchers. And that just kind of felt like a vote of confidence in me, right? So that gave me some confidence in myself. I obviously, had some success in the minor leagues offensively, and I knew that there was more in there. I knew that, I could impact the game more offensively for sure. And my defense was getting better. I don't know that I was going to ever win any Gold Gloves, but I felt confident, and we had a really good catching coach at the time, Mike Stefanski, who we put a lot of time and effort in the off season there, leading up to the 2014 season to kind of make sure that part of the game wasn't going to be an issue. But I knew that I could hit, right? I knew that at some point things were going to click. So Don Long came in at that time, was the new hitting coach. We had talked a good bit in the off season, showed up to spring training with the plan. And things just seemed to really be in a good spot and click. It wasn't necessarily a huge adjustment. I did a few different things, lowered my hands a little bit, got rid of maybe kind of a preset step. And I think more than anything, it was just a confidence type thing. The organization believed in me. We had good people around me that believed in me. I believed in myself, and the ability was there. It was just a matter of getting the reps and kind of, it really helped that they said, hey, man, you're going to be our guy. We believe in you. Go out there and do it. And I was ready at that time to be able to produce.
There was a phrase used to me the other day when someone told me that they felt as if you can hit at the AA level, then you have a good chance to be able to hit at the big league level if the mental makeup is right. I guess I'll start with that question, and then I got a follow-up one. Do you think that that's realistic, or do you buy into that, or what's your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, that's a really difficult statement to kind of a blanket statement to say. I think a lot of it, the game has changed so much in many different aspects. The minor leagues are getting younger and younger. You don't necessarily have the older guys sticking around in AAA that can really pitch and know how to navigate a ball game. I don't know that I can say that.
Right,
absolutely, this guy's going to come up here and he puts up some numbers in AA. I don't know that I buy that quite yet. I think that age is also a big thing. If you're 25 in AA and putting up numbers, that's a little bit different than a 20-year-old doing it. I think that everybody is their own player, and we'll see. I think that that's the best way to put it. We'll see what happens when you come to the big leagues. I think the jump from AAA to the big leagues has gotten larger and larger, over the years. And I don't want to sound like the old guy talking about this, but you don't have as many older guys in AAA. It's more prospects, more organizational guys. So it's become very difficult. The pitching in the big leagues has gotten unbelievably good, better and better every single year, with kind of the way that guys develop now. So it's a jump, and we'll see what happens.
Well, the follow-up question I have was something that you just touched on, which is the confidence that you felt like the Reds had given you when they obviously traded away Ryan Hannigan. Do you buy into the notion of the idea of guys coming up too early, and maybe they struggle a little bit, and then obviously maybe they have to get sent back down, and then many might say that if they had, and I don't want to say never struggled because that's probably very rare in the big league case, but instead of just waiting and then maybe knowing for sure that, hey, if they're 100% ready to go, do you buy into that confidence factor of going up and maybe having to come back down and bringing guys up too early, or do you just say, listen, if you can play, you're probably going to figure it out one way or the other?
I would say yes and no. And I would also make the point that it matters the people that you have around you, right? Like if you are in an organization that has some really good veteran, as a player, you always learn more from the players than anybody else, right? Like when I came up, I learned from Scott Rowland, I learned from Jay Bruce, learned from Joey, right? That coaches are great. Coaches help you a ton. But as far as how to play the game and how to navigate the mental aspects of the game and how to navigate your preparation for the day, right? You always learn more from the players. So if a team has young players coming up and they embrace them and they show them the ropes and help them out, I think that can help somebody get through the struggles, like you mentioned, at the big league level. I also think that sometimes you get sent down, and that may be the best place for you because it gives you a little bit of reset. In 2012, I got sent down there for 10 days. It was at the end of the season. I didn't necessarily feel like it helped me a ton, but it made me aware that, like, hey, I got to be ready to go next year, right? Like, I just got sent down. I don't want to start the year in AAA. It puts a little bit of pressure on you. So that aspect of it is good too. I don't know that you can say there's certainly one way to do it or another way. I do enjoy that the game is promoting prospects quicker now, right? Like, it's good that we're going to see Anthony Volpe play with the Yankees. It's great that the Cardinals are going to promote the Walker kid to be on opening day. I think that aspect of it is awesome. And those organizations both have a lot of veteran players around that will support those guys. I think that your environment that you're around certainly makes a difference.
So, Devin, this could potentially be the last season for Joey Votto in Cincinnati. Tell us about your time playing with Votto as your teammate. Any fun stories you have on Joey or anything like that?
Yeah, Joey's great. Joey and I still talk quite a bit. One of the most genuinely caring teammates that I think that I've ever had. We initially with Joey, and this is probably with a lot of people, and maybe a little bit more reserved and quiet. And the first time that I ever spoke to him, it was in spring training, and I think I had just hit BP, and it was just early in spring training. I took BP, and Joey came up with me. I don't even know that he introduced himself, right? Like, Joey was a little bit maybe less social in those days, not like he is now on TikTok and everything. But he said, I just think he came over and said, "Hey, swing at strikes in BP. You got to make sure you swing at strikes in BP," and then walked away. And that was kind of the conversation. And it was like, all right, look, I'm going to try to swing at strikes next time in BP. That sounds like a good idea. This guy knows how to take a walk. But yeah, our relationship obviously developed from there, and we became very close and still are, and we have our conversations go a lot more in depth than just swinging at strikes in BP now.
I got a couple chat questions for you. One's a little bit fun. Sirboy Wonder wants to know what made you want to cut trees down in your backyard and use them as your bats?
Yeah, this is a good story. So my hometown is Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, for the people who don't know. And the vast majority of the wood that gets used in wooden bats, maple wooden bats, is from like New York, a little bit in Canada, and northern Pennsylvania. So I live there. And Jack Marucci, who is the owner of Marucci Bats, is from Uniontown, Pennsylvania, which is down by Pittsburgh. So we got to chatting one day, and I said, "Jack, I got to think that I have 40 acres back home in Pennsylvania. I got to think that that's pretty good wood. You think you could make some bats out of that?" He said, "I love that idea. Let's do it." So he came out to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. We didn't know at the time that like the trees would, if they would be up to the quality that you need for major league bats, right? So he came out to the house. He had his logger come. We walked around the property. We looked for the certain trees. as far as it has to have the right grain, they have to be straight, they have to be a certain diameter. And we ended up walking like 40 acres. We were out there for like 3 hours, and we found 3 total trees.
Wow.
3 trees that they said might work. So I said, all right, go ahead and cut them down, and let's hope we can get some bats. So they tested the wood, and it was just as strong as a normal bat that they would send me, right? So I was like, all right, cool. So they ended up with those 3 trees. They made a dozen bats out of 3 huge trees, like 3 of the biggest trees on my property. Like it felt like quite a waste after the fact that we cut down these big, huge trees and made 12 bats. But yeah, it was really cool. It was really just it was really cool that Jack and spent the time to have his company come out and cut down those trees. But I just thought it would be really cool if I could use some wood from my own property. And I ended up breaking a bat, and I was like, I'm not using these anymore. I don't want to break them. So I think we sent one to the Hall of Fame, and I broke a couple, and I probably still have. I gave a few away to like some hometown charities that they could auction off, and I probably still have about half a dozen upstairs in the attic.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if you still had any. So you do still have a few. I would assume when you break a bat and you've gone through the process of that length of effort, it probably hurts a little worse than just the traditional.
It hurt
bat.
a lot, That was my baby, right? Like that bat was tough to break, and I broke a lot of bats throughout my career. I hit a lot of balls not on the barrel, so that wasn't uncommon. But those ones felt worse when they would break, right? Like those ones, man, dang. I don't want to do that again. So yeah, I kind of shelved them and went to a different bat.
I know we got to let you go and let you run, and we appreciate your time. I have a quick question, though, because I was fortunate enough to know some folks that played in the minor leagues, and they had and I actually had known a guy that played at the big league level, and they had talked about how important they felt like the wooden bats were from a brand standpoint. Is there truly, and maybe this is them getting really deep into the weeds of this, do you think there's truly a difference between getting a major league wooden bat versus just a quote unquote wooden bat maybe someone supplies you? Is there do you feel like there's a big difference?
For sure. Yes. That was especially true when they used ash bats, right? Like the ash bats, there was a huge variance between the really good ones and the bad ones. Maple is more uniform, and everybody uses maple now.
Right.
But maple bats, in my experience, you can get a better maple bat as a minor league player than maybe what you could 10 years ago when everybody was using ash. Those bats were 100% completely different. You would get some junk as a minor leaguer, but as a big leaguer, you would get some good bats.
Gotcha. So if you had a connection at the big league level, then you were just a little step ahead. You had a little bit of edge on somebody else.
Yeah,
perhaps.
it definitely made a difference, for sure. No doubt.
All right, fair enough. Well, Devin, I appreciate you coming on here. I know that personally don't know you, obviously. Maybe that we'll change that as the year progresses, and we'll hope to have you back on. But in the meantime, win some baseball games down there for the Pitt Panthers, and enjoy your time around the game, and hold those bats sacred. And
yeah, I got a 5:45 wake up call tomorrow morning. We go to Duke. We got a connecting flight. This is like I'm really earning it down there at the college level. It's a little bit different than just pulling up to the plane and jumping on and flying to St. Louis and the bus. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, we're going to try to win some ball games. All right.
That's right. Well, beats a van. Always remember that. Beats a van.
All of Chatterbox is hoping you guys beat Duke tomorrow. We're rooting for you.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on you.
Appreciate it.
Keep an eye on you. Thank you, Devin. Appreciate you coming on. All right. Well, like I said, we've been running through them one after the next, and the next guy coming on, some might say was just as good of a hitter as Devin Mesoraco. And I know one thing that he was. He likes bat flips. He loves cold beer on sunny days at Great American Ballpark. In the free time, he does a radio station called The Mo Egger Show on 1530 and 700 WLW. I made half of that up, Mo. I don't know whether or not it's accurate and or correct, but correct me if I'm wrong. If any of that is not true.
Well, first of all, I was listening to Devin talk about bats, and
Oh yeah,
I didn't know if you want. I didn't know if you wanted me to I'll try to hold this up to my camera. I didn't know if you wanted me to explain this this wood bat from Louisville Slugger I got as a groomsman's gift. So I can go into the entire. I've got no hits with that thing. What's going on?
How are you, Mo? Mo, do you think that bat would pass the inspections of the Major League bats versus the bats that he said were junk?
I don't know that we want to make contact with anything with that thing. I don't know that it's regulation size. I mean, I always say it's the only weapon we have in our house. So if somebody were to break in, it's me and that thing because I don't own a gun. So that's
well,
what it's
don't tell
there
people
for.
that, Mo. Don't, we're not going to tell people that.
Now I'm going to have like an army of people trying to break in. That's going to be great.
All right, Nick. I know you probably have an insightful question for him outside of just the bad humor that I have introducing Mo. So what do you got for him?
I don't have anything insightful. Mo, what's your thoughts? Opening day tomorrow.
Can't wait. Ready to see if this team can be good enough to get people excited again. I think the most interesting thing from a 30,000-foot view as it relates to the Reds is can this team make people feel better? Can this team repair the bridge between itself and the city? Can this team get people talking about it in ways that go above and beyond grumbling about ownership? And I certainly understand the grumbling about ownership, but at some point the team is going to have to do the talking for the organization. If that happens, people are going to stop talking about Phil Castellini and Bob Castellini. If that doesn't happen, people are going to keep talking about Phil Castellini and Bob Castellini. As a talk show host, I'm excited to talk about baseball again because last year we didn't do it. If this team is any better, if this team is interesting, we'll actually talk about baseball and not ownership. And as a fan, look, last year was miserable. I'm looking for something less miserable this year. So I'm excited to see if we get a lower degree of misery this year. That bar is extremely low, obviously. But I am excited about seeing what the Reds can do on the field. And the season is opening. We're not in the wake of a teardown. Say what you want about Phil on opening day last year, which we've beaten to death. But the opener to last season, we were still sort of sifting through the wreckage of them dismantling the team, right or wrong, whether it was the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. That hovered over everything. And that's not the case this year. They're starting kind of from the ground up, and so the real painful part of this is over. I don't think they're going to lose 100 games. I'm excited to see if the trio of starting pitchers that are the foundation of this team can take collectively and individually a major step forward and find out what guys like Spencer Steer and Jose Barrero and Will Benson et al. can accomplish starting tomorrow.
What do you think? From a public perception standpoint, do you think that the Reds community or Reds fandom is going to buy into the idea of guys progressing, or is it still always going to be the wins and losses? And I don't think many Reds fans expect 85, 90 wins. Obviously, maybe even 81 wins would probably be a start at some point for the Cincinnati Reds. Most people have it penciled in as the extreme optimist of 75 wins. Do you think that most of the fan base is accepting of the idea that it's not just merely about the wins and losses, but there's guys on this roster currently, and there's obviously guys that might come up later this year that we need to see progression from? Do you think that genuinely we're going to buy into that as a collective fan base, or is it strictly going to be, hey, can we win 75 games or more, and if not, it's a failure?
The more I do this, the more I hate excuse me, the more I hate painting with a broad brush, because if you search far enough, you can find people who think the Reds are going to win 95 games, and all the grumbling about the direction the organization has chosen to go in is completely unfair. You could find people who believe the Reds are going to set the all-time record for most losses in a season. So I think for the most part, I think there is an acknowledgement that you cannot entirely judge the progress of this organization and whether or not this season is a success by gauging their playoff chances, by making it postseason or bust, or winning record or bust. If you're doing that, let's be honest, you're setting this team up to fail. I think you really have to dive into things on a more granular level. So am I seeing the progression of a core of players that you go, okay, these guys are going to be here the next time the Reds are good, and the next time the Reds are good is not that far away. At the same time, I do think you have to show tangible improvement if you are going to expect people to believe that your plan is working. The good news is this: it's hard to lose 100 games. I mean, as easy as they kind of made it seem last year, they had to start 3-22, and they still didn't lose their 100th game until the last game of the season. So the good news is probably can't get much worse. You're also starting from pretty much, just the absolute bottoming out that you could experience as a franchise. So chances are, even if a lot of things go wrong, they're going to win more games than they did last year, because it's really hard to lose 101 games. So I kind of start with that, and then I go, okay, well, what can be better than last season? Tyler Stevenson maybe plays more. Jonathan India plays more and plays better. There's not as many, retread-ish type guys here. I'm intrigued by Will Benson. I'm intrigued by Spencer Steer. You're not, Green, Ashcraft, and Lodolo are not in diapers anymore, which is a step in the right direction. There's a lot to like about where they are now as opposed to where they were a year ago. But yeah, I think you have, if we're sitting here in October and they went 62 and 100 again, you're going to have a lot of people who don't want to hear about the good things that happened. I think you have to have individual improvement and a greater sense of what this team could be in 2 years or even next year. But along with that, I do think you have to have an uptick in the win total to get people to really buy in. I mean, at the end of the day, it's professional sports. Progress is measured very simply. It's on the scoreboard and in the standings. And if there's not some degree of progress, I think you're going to have a lot of people who kind of roll their eyes at the suggestion that this team is about to turn the corner.
Mo, what's your thoughts on some of these rule changes and how you think it'll play in from the fan perspective?
Love them. I'm a little skeptical of the shift change because or the change in the rules regarding the shift. We're banning the shift because I'm still of the belief that it's going to lead to more strikeouts, and that's not what the sport needs. Now, I've heard people who are smarter than me throw cold water over this theory, but my theory is if you take away a defender from the pull side, then the hitter is going to be more likely to try to pull, and the more you're trying to pull, the more you're overswinging, and the more overswinging, the less contact, and the less contact, the more strikeouts. So I'm a little skeptical that the banning of the shift isn't going to lead to more strikeouts, but I'm open-minded about it. Everything else I love. First of all, the pitch clock. This is, to me, such a non-story. It's unbelievable. You have hundreds of players in Major League Baseball right now who have experience playing regular season games with a pitch clock because they have it in the minor leagues. Secondly, these are professional baseball players. This is what they do for a living. In anything that any of us do for a living, from time to time, you have to adjust to new stuff, new rules, new procedures, new protocols, new employees, new boss, new technology, whatever it is. Professionals do that. These are professional baseball players. This is their livelihood. They will adjust. In spring training, for the most part, they adjusted. At the end of the day, look, I'm 45 years old. I can romanticize about what baseball should be like, how timelessness it should be. There's too much standing around. There's too many nothing burgers. There's too many instances in which you're watching a game and you're screaming at the TV, you're screaming out at the field, come on, do something. This sport is trying to get people to not have their attention diverted from what the action is supposed to be. So the way you do that is to increase the amount of action that people are seeing. We don't need 3-hour and 20-minute 2-1 ball games. Are you going to have long games? Sure. Long games should be the exception, not the rule. So I'm a big proponent of the pitch clock. I love anything that incentivizes stolen bases and increases strategy. The pickoff throw is so pointless that I've heard broadcasters talk about how now they have to count pickoff throws because they actually matter. Because if you throw over twice, guess what? Now the guy can go. Stolen bases are exciting. Having teams not play station-to-station baseball, that's exciting. The added strategy of the pitch out coming back is exciting. By the way, catchers can still throw over. How many times do you see a catcher try a pickoff throw anymore? It doesn't happen. It's going to happen a bunch now. We need more steals. We need more bang-bang plays. The larger bases, I think, are going to give us bang-bang plays. I love all this stuff. I like the fact that now in baseball, everybody's going to play each other. We didn't need 19 Reds-Pirates games. Are you kidding me? And so now the Reds are going to play everybody. And over the course of a 2-year stretch, you're going to see every team come to your city. Obviously, here in Cincinnati, you'll have everybody come to Great American Ballpark. Pretty much every initiative. And look, I could criticize Rob Manfred for a lot of things. Not this. And look, he was very upfront a couple of years ago. We want the games to be quicker paced. Here are some things I'm thinking about doing. If I don't get the cooperation of the players, here are some things I'm going to implement. Guess what? The players still stood around. They still picked their nose on the mound. They're still adjusting their batting gloves. Guess what? We're not doing that anymore. I am a big fan of most of the initiatives. I'm never going to be a big proponent of the magic runner at second base in 10 innings because I think you're trying to solve a problem that's really not there. And I'm skeptical that banning the shift isn't going to lead to more strikeouts. But everything else you can sign me up for. And from what I saw in spring training, the games moved briskly, if that's a word. There was an increase in stolen bases. There was an increase in bang-bang plays. There was a decrease in guys just standing around. There was a decrease in inaction, and the games were shorter. I'm here for all those things.
Well, Mo, you brought up something through that well-executed beautiful display of something that I don't think Rob Manfred's getting enough credit for currently. Listen, most commissioners and most people that run a league, they're never going to be all that well liked regardless because they're the Antichrist to a certain extent of whatever it is that you believe for that league. However, he does deserve some flowers for what he's done. And I also think he deserves some flowers possibly on the optics of being able to get this game viewed again. So with the Bally Sports and these regional networks and these things that are happening currently and the landscape is shifting in regards to media as quickly as you could possibly imagine. Although, before I ask that question, I do have to bang you a little bit. You said that you like strategy. And anything that adds to the game of strategy, I look as the guy on second base, the free runner, the ghost runner, the magic runner, whatever we decide to call this guy that goes out to second base to start an inning off. It adds strategy, Mo. And I know that maybe there should be a little buffer window to where maybe you play one extra inning that's organic and it's just directly by the rules. But nobody wants a 17, 15, 14, 16 inning baseball game anymore.
I do. Because they're outliers. How many 17-inning baseball games did we have before the Magic Runner? Like, if there was a huge epidemic of 5 times a week, games were going 17 innings, okay, how often do they happen? I actually, last summer, looked this up, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. So something along the lines of 9 to 11% of big league games prior to 2020 were going extra innings. So 1 out of 10. Get to the 10th inning. The insane majority of those games were over by the end of the 11th. An even larger percentage were over by the end of the 12th. So when they do happen, I've always thought they're kind of fun. And look, I understand the argument's going to be, well, pitchers aren't going as deep into games, and so managers are running out of pitchers. Well, okay, manage your team better. Sorry. We have now 26 players per team. Manage your team better. Or make the decision to tank the game. The Reds played a game against the Philadelphia Phillies in 2011 where Dusty Baker, if I recall, made the decision to pitch Wilson Valdez like in the 18th inning because he's like, all right, screw it. I'm not using anybody else. We're going to lose. Okay, that's a decision you have to make. At the same time, especially in the age of social media, I remember coming home from being out one night. The Reds are in San Francisco on a Friday night. They played a 19-inning game that ended at like 4 o'clock in the morning here. That was kind of interesting. It was kind of fun. It was bizarre. It was weird. The beauty of sports is sometimes you have these weird kind of occurrences that are not the norm. And we're not going to have as many of those. So do we routinely want 19-inning games? No. But if we had 4 a year, well, is that the worst thing in the world? No. In fact, it'd be kind of cool if your team played in one of those. So I think that what I don't like is, first of all, baseball is telling you the rule is a sham because when the playoffs get here, they get rid of the rule.
Well, you could say the same thing about the NFL.
The NFL is trying to avoid ties, and it's a league that's all about player safety because it's a more physically demanding sport. So the NFL doesn't want ties. People bring up college football all the time because my argument is, in the 10th inning, we stop playing baseball. We play a different sport. In baseball, you have to advance 360 feet to score. In the 10th inning, suddenly we plop a guy at second base. He's got to go 180 feet. Well, we play a different sport in college football. Couple of things. A, those guys, up until now, I guess, not getting paid. B, for years we had ties. We don't have them anymore. C, it's football. It's more physically demanding. So, yeah,
what
you want to get a football game over quickly. I would be all in favor of shootouts in soccer. But, again, soccer is a sport where they have ties. They have draws. The argument against the shootout is we don't want to, we had the World Cup end in a shootout. We don't want to fundamentally change how we're playing the game at the game's most critical moments. We do that in baseball in the 10th inning. So I'm never going to be on board with that. I'm never going to be okay with fundamentally changing how we play it in what I think is a solution in search of a problem.
That's fair. I mean, I would venture to say that you have 162 games, Mo. And my preference would be, listen, if it means that I don't have to watch a 4-hour baseball game and then have a manager have to make the decision that they were basically just going to tank the game, and I watched 4 hours for one of the managers basically to throw the white flag in. I mean, I don't know. That'd be like watching a 4-hour sporting event, and then all of a sudden the cable television clicks off, and I can't even really get to enjoy a meaningful ending to it.
But managers do that anyway. I mean, a manager might sit his best player on a day game after a night game on a Sunday, acknowledging, I don't have as good of a chance to win this game, but I'm going to have him fresh for the tougher opponent on Monday. I'm going to declare this relief pitcher unavailable for this game, which lessens my chance of winning, so I can win the game tomorrow. Managers will also say, this game is too important to declare a pitcher unavailable. A manager early in the season might say, my starting pitcher is cruising. I'm going to take him out because I want him over the long haul. By the way, it might lessen my chance of winning. Managers are already doing that. They're already weighing the benefits of winning this game tonight and doing everything they can to win this game tonight, perhaps at the expense of tomorrow's game. Managers have been doing that since the sport started. And so what's the harm in making them do that again? For the sake of actually playing baseball once the 10th inning gets here. That's starting the inning with a guy on second base is not baseball.
It's not. One would argue maybe they're from time to time through 162 innings that it elicits at least the opportunity of there being more strategy in the game, which strategy is interesting. Quick question for you.
Sure.
If I made you one single guy on this team that you're most intrigued by and why?
Well, Will Benson, guy they got from the Indians or the Guardians. My bad.
No, it's
a little bit of a
okay.
late bloomer. Puts up good numbers in Columbus. Ends up making the Cleveland team. Is on their postseason roster. He's got wheels. Even when he didn't have uber productive seasons at the minor league level, he could hit more than 20 homers in a year. He could play all three outfield positions. He watching him get interviewed. He seems like a guy who gets it. He brings athleticism and speed to this team. They're going to have to figure out ways to score, especially with the new rules and ways that don't necessarily strictly involve the 3-run homer. Maybe he can help in that regard. You get him for years. He doesn't cost all that much. I'm not really sure they gave up a ton. There's no real downside to giving him a shot. Will Benson, that's the guy for me. There's others, but and he had a great spring. And it felt like every time I listened or had a chance to watch, Will Benson was doing something cool. So that's my guy.
He seems like a guy that Reds fans, if he gets off to a hot start, Reds fans are going to love him. He's going to be an absolute fan favorite.
Yeah. I mean, I watched him today just talk about how grateful he is for the opportunity, and you can kind of tell when that's canned. This dude seems like he's genuinely grateful and thrilled and pumped to have a chance to be on this team. So among many, he's at the top of the list for me.
All right, Mo. Well, we know that you got a busy day tomorrow. We don't want to hold you too late here. We appreciate you coming on the program, enjoying chatting it up. I'm going to push back for a long time on the Ghost Runner, and maybe at one point I'll get you to come around to the dark side. We'll see.
One of my best friends, who I go to a lot of Reds games with, his name is Barry Katz, and if you ever go to a game with us, invariably you will hear us argue about this rule. He taunts me about it on social media every time they announce the rule is coming back. And I feel bad for those who are around us because it turns into like an inning and a half long debate about the magic runner rule. But again, I'm all for all the other rule changes. Give me shortened games, give me quick games, give me stolen bases. I'm here. I'm in.
All right.
Sounds like we need to find Mo and Barry at the game and record, get a little Chatterbox content.
Yeah,
bring the Chatterbox camera. We're down the right field line. It'll be. By the way, speaking of cameras, I'm sorry, my HD camera's not working, so it looks like.
Right.
I look like I'm being beheaded or something here. So
I don't know.
My apologies.
We can help you. We'll send you a camera down there, Mo.
Thanks. That'd be great.
All right. You got a nice looking microphone, though. Got to be honest. Best
microphone is good.
Best microphone of the night, Mo. Congratulations.
This is called an RE20. I do have. Here's the dumpy camera. I don't know why it didn't.
Oh, Mo.
Anyway, what do you?
We'll have to help you out. It's all right. I like your hat, though. Go Knicks.
Hey, go Knicks. Bobby Nightingale's next. He'll be.
That he is.
Be far more insightful than me.
I don't know. Well, we'll let the chat decide. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mo. Appreciate you, man.
Well, from me. See you guys. All right.
See ya. All right. I don't know if I don't know if we're gonna make the chat decide. Yeah, Mo's a Knicks guy. Mo is he's a Knicks guy, and we're running a little behind schedule, so we're gonna keep it moving. And that is none other than Bobby Nightingale. Bobby, you got a busy day tomorrow. We know you got you've slept your way through spring training. You've gotten yourself to opening day. Is there any? I know probably the answer, but is there any nerves that come with the idea of everything ramping up and it's officially here? Is that a thing from a reporter side, or is that left to the players?
More for the players. I mean, I feel like after 6 weeks of spring training, it's like I've been ready for the season to start for a while now. So it's especially after like the World Baseball Classic. That's when I was like, after USA Japan game, that was like, all right, I'm ready for real games to matter again, and that was fun to watch. So now it's kind of like, oh, it's finally here, instead of I've been waiting for this day, counting down. And I've already been at that stage. And although hearing Mo talk about the runner on second rule in the 10th inning fired me up, because I'm on the complete opposite side of him. So
you're on my side.
I was fired up listening to that.
Are you so you're on team Magic Runner, Ghost Runner, or Extra Runner? I don't know. What are we calling it, Bobby?
I call it the Manfred Man. He's the one who came up with it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. And many people don't like Manfred, but I'll call it the Manfred Man. Why not? I'm all for it, Bobby. Are you all for it?
I'm all for it. This is my one argument. Baseball is the only sport when a game goes to overtime, fans leave. This is the only way to keep fans at the game. I mean, there's extra strategy involved. But every other sport, you go to overtime, it's more exciting. Baseball is the one sport where you go to overtime, people leave.
I'm all for it. Bobby, I could have used you for the argument in here. In fact, what we'll do is we'll hijack Mo. We'll get him on the stream next time, and we'll have you waiting in the lurks. The next thing you know, we're going to say, hey, let's talk about the Manfred Man, and we're going to bring you in. But on to more important topics, the Cincinnati Reds. I know that there's been a ton of speculation. There's been a lot of optimism, but then there's obviously been pessimism. It depends on who you ask and who you talk to in regards to how they feel about this season. Clearly, I don't want to say it, but your job is not to be a fan. But from an objective point, what is your overall thought moving into this year versus probably maybe the day-to-day grind that was last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're not a team that's going to be competing for a playoff spot, realistically. I mean, they're just undermanned. They don't have the depth, not enough star power yet. But I think it could be an interesting year just in terms of, if you take away kind of the wins-loss, if they can develop, if you have Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft all take step forwards, which is a huge ask. I mean, at 3 young starting pitchers and their second year not showing regression, I think you feel great about the team going into 2024, which is probably a more realistic, you might be able to take a huge step forward type season once more prospects are making their way to the big leagues and you have a little bit more star power there. But there's a lot of interesting guys around the field. I mean, not even just the 3 starting pitchers, but Jonathan India has questions around him. Tyler Stevenson needs to bounce back after an injury-filled year. Joey Votto, possibly his last year in a Reds uniform. Spencer Steer could add his name to the kind of that core mix. So I think it could be an exciting year. I think they might play a more fun brand of baseball. I think they'll be better defensively. I think they'll run a little bit more, be better on the base pass, which they were not good at all on the base pass last year. So I think it could be even more interesting than, say they lose 90-plus games. I still think it could be, there'll be enjoyable aspects to it.
So, Bobby, you wrote a story today about Jose Barrero. Talk a little bit about Barrero and what he needs to do and kind of what he's looking forward to this season.
I felt like he entered camp. It was like his job to lose. I mean, it was, they added Kevin Newman, but it always felt like he was kind of, if Jose Barrero has a bad camp, he can start and you have a bunch of prospects behind him. But it was kind of, okay, if you have to perform, and he at least did a little more than the minimum. He showed improved approach. He still strikes out probably a little bit too much. But you could see kind of the recognition, like when guys are hanging sliders, he's doing damage against it. I mean, he's hitting it at least hard, hit to the wall. I mean, I think he had 4 doubles, a homer, and 2 triples during the spring. So, I mean, the power's coming back a little bit, which is what you want to see. I mean, not many guys can hit a great slider anyway. So if you hit the mistakes, that's all you need to see from an offensive standpoint. And then his defense, I mean, it's leaps and bounds. Like last year, I felt like him versus Kyle Farmer. Kyle Farmer was kind of a more reliable shortstop, wasn't going to make errors, whereas Barrero had more range, but he's a little bit more inconsistent. This spring, he's been as consistent as anybody, making the highlight plays, making all the routine plays. If he stays at this level defensively, I bet he's in the Gold Glove conversation. I mean, that's how good he looks out there. So, I mean, defensively, he looks great. He'll play some center field, but he did a good job this spring of at least you had a job to win, you had to prove yourself, and he did at least that.
Bobby, you bring up a great point, and one which I've asked openly, and that is if Barrero's best asset is his glove, and you could make the claim that maybe he becomes one of the best fielding shortstops in all of Major League Baseball, and he can win a Gold Glove that you just mentioned. What is the notion of moving him around or obviously putting him in the outfield? I know why. We all know that there's guys coming up behind him and there needs to be versatility. But do you think there's any fear of the idea of taking his best asset away just because there's someone else, quote unquote, in the organization that is supposed to be a, quote unquote, all-star in an Ellie De La Cruz or a Matt McLean or obviously maybe an Arroyo years down the line? But you get where I'm going with this. Is that any cause for concern, or do you think that that'll all kind of figure itself out?
Yeah, I mean, I asked the same question to some people this spring, just how do you kind of sort out all the shortstops when they're all kind of coming at the same time? And almost everyone said, just let it play out. If Jose Barrero's hitting and playing great defense, maybe you move one of the younger guys, or you at least listen to some trade talks, that type of thing, if you feel great about them. If you don't, I mean, if Ellie De La Cruz comes out and hits 400 at AAA and Jose Barrero struggles like he did last year, then he's not your shortstop of the future. Maybe you look at center field. Maybe you make him at worst, he's a utility player, a glove first utility player, which there's value in that. But I think you kind of wait to see how the guys force their hand. I mean, if Matt McLean gets off to a great start, Ellie De La Cruz is a little banged up. He'll miss the start of the season. So, I mean, there's opportunities for all those guys to kind of push forward. Arroyo, he as a prospect, I mean, he's the most impressive guy I've seen outside of De La Cruz in terms of long-term potential. I think he's a future star, more so than anybody else besides Ellie. So I think you just wait for those guys to kind of push their way, force their hand. Because, I mean, look at, like, Nick Senzel. I remember when he came up third base, not that anyone said move Eugenio Suarez because he was an all-star at the time. But I don't think you move, you force Suarez's hand when he's playing at the all-star level just because you think Senzel's the long-term answer. He's had trouble hitting, trouble staying healthy. Think how much trouble they would have been in if they traded Eugenio Suarez to make room for, a Senzel, and then he has the injuries and doesn't hit as expected. then you're worse off in the long term. So I think you kind of have to have guys force their hands.
So, Bobby, the Reds still haven't announced their final roster. Sounds like they got one position player spot left. You hinted at Stuart Fairchild probably being the most likely. Do you think there's any chance of a last-minute ad off of someone off the waiver wire or something? Is that why they haven't announced it, or is it just any reason why that?
I think it's more you just wait to the last possible second. I mean, there's no real benefit to announcing it early. I do think it'll be Fairchild, just because it's kind of a temporary thing. I mean, Nick Senzel's supposed to begin a rehab assignment in a week. You'll have Joey Votto back on the roster potentially within 10 days. So those are two guys that are going to play every day, and they're going to kind of empty your bench a little bit. So I think like Fairchild, if he's on the opening day roster, his role is going to be starting against left-handed pitching, which is a pretty narrow role in itself. I mean, how many times are you facing left-handed pitching in a week? So I think it's more to do with just they'll take it down to the deadline just because, why force it? Versus I haven't heard anything in terms of a mystery signing or mystery trade coming.
Bobby, does opening day, and I asked Charlie this as well, and maybe it's changed different for you versus him, but is opening day a little bit different from a day-to-day operations on your end, or is it pretty much just business as usual?
No, completely different. I mean, it's one of those, the whole Inquirer newsroom's kind of invested in it. I mean, you'll have news reporters covering the parade. It's a lot more like a Super Bowl type event, covering it from an Inquirer standpoint. So it's kind of a day in itself, kind of a spectacle. I'm glad there's an off day afterwards, so it's kind of like catch your breath and reset. And then game 2 is like, that's when it's all back to normal from there on out. But opening day is definitely kind of its own special thing.
Last question for you, Bobby, is you and a lot of other people have talked about how a lot of the younger Reds players are using some of the doubters or some of the projections as fuel and motivation. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what else are you going to do at this point? I mean, all you have to do is turn on social media, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, and they all know. I mean, look at one power ranking, and they're going to see the Reds are 28th, 29th, or 30th, depending on who wrote it. So, I mean, they know the outside. I mean, they also know they lost 100 games last year, and they kind of have to prove it. I like what Joey Votto's been saying. I mean, this is kind of a year where the Reds are kind of at a crossroads. Another 100 loss season, I think, would disappoint the fan base. But you have so much young talent. I mean, it's one of those, like I mentioned at the beginning, like you lose 90 games, it could be an interesting, year still. And I think it all comes down to the pitching. I remember when Nick Castellanos signed with the Reds, it was at the end of January 2020. He signed specifically for the Reds starting pitching. And there's a lot of guys around the league, when you ask them, why do you sign to this place? It's specifically for when you find starters that can pitch in the playoffs. And Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft, those are three guys that if they take the leaps and bounds that I know Derek Johnson hopes they do, I mean, those are three guys that are potential playoff starters, especially Green and Lodolo. I mean, those guys, people rave. You go around any clubhouse, I mean, they rave about facing those guys after playing them. So if those three guys can take a step forward, I think that goes further for the organization than anything else.
I'll leave you with the same question that I asked Mo at the end, which is if there was one guy, one player on the Cincinnati Reds that you maybe are most intrigued about, who is that and why?
I think Spencer Steer. I mean, I think he's kind of the forgotten guy, still a borderline top 100 prospect that I feel like he kind of gets overshadowed a bit based off, there's the exciting trade for Marte and Arroyo at the same time, and De La Cruz is in the farm system. But I talked to a bunch of scouts this offseason, especially I remember at the Fall League, and teams that were in trade talks with the Twins around the same time were all talking, we love Spencer Steer. We couldn't get a deal done, but watching him, the power's real, the hit tool's real. Obviously, he can play anywhere in the infield. The Reds are going to keep him at third base for now. But he's a guy, I mean, just you could tell he's different this spring than he was last September. Kind of struggled last September. He had a great first game, and then he struggled after that. But he kind of reminds me of Jonathan India when Jonathan India forced his way into his rookie year, into the opening day lineup, where he just looks like he belongs a lot more, controls at bats a lot better. He had a really good spring. I know that a lot was made of his errors. He had like 3 or 4 throwing errors, but other than that, I mean, he hit the ball as good as anybody. So curious to see him take a step forward, because if you can add him to India and Stevenson, that's kind of what you have to do to build the core position player wise.
All right, Bobby. Well, you enjoy your Super Bowl, as you put it, tomorrow. Enjoy the day. It's going to be a nice day weather-wise. We had this debate. Maybe you can settle it for us. We had the debate of whether or not we were going to find our ways inside the stadium or not. Nick, for as big of a fan as he is, he just let me know before he walked on this show that he's not been to an opening day at Great American Ballpark, which is absolutely ridiculous if we're going to be frank. Do you think it's that important to go live right after the game, or do you think it's okay maybe to let it marinate a few hours for us to do a live show after the game and get Nick inside the stadium? What would you do?
No, you got to get Nick inside the stadium. I remember what was the hashtag a couple years ago where it was like Kirby hates Farmer. You got to set one up that's like Kirby into GABP, or you got to get something like that.
They never forget. I went to like 55 games in 2009, but I didn't go to opening day because I'm cheap. It's just me cheap more than anything else.
All right. Thank you for settling that, Bobby. We're gonna get him in the stadium tomorrow. I don't know what the hashtag's gonna be, but we'll figure that out before now and then. We'll find a way to get Kirby in the stadium.
I mean, there's a lot of people in there. Someone's got to be able to get him in.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Bobby. Well, take care. Have fun. Enjoy your day tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Bobby.
See you, Bobby. All right, Nick. So here's the thing. Kirby hates Farmer, hashtag by Dylan Rushman. Here's the thing. I'm trying to do this live, so don't judge me for it. I am trying to get on the Betfred Sportsbook app live and see whether or not we have this boost. I know that they were working on it. Whether or not it actually happens, I don't know. But we're going to look. We're going to see if we can't figure this out. What's Mouse Cop saying?
Where's Kirby going to go?
Well, I thought
Moorline Lager House.
Moorline Lager House. We are going to do Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, tomorrow at 10 a.m. till noon at Moorline Lager House. If you have the ability to stop over there on your way into the stadium and/or pregame and say hello, please do. We will be out there. But these guys don't know it yet. I've made the executive decision that, and I was trying to get the Face ID to work. It's not working. I'm gonna have to type in my email and do all that. But here's the deal: we made a deal with Betfred that we wanted to have a parlay of our own. But we said we wanted Jonathan India, more than 1.5 bags. So 2 bags or more. Walks don't count. So you have to have 2 singles, a double, a triple, and or a home run. He's going to lead the game off with a double.
Triple.
Now he's going to get a triple now.
In the gap.
Okay, a triple. I mean, he's getting greedy. I was going to say a double, but whatever. Triple it is by Nick Kirby. I wanted 1.5 over for India bags, and then Reds to win by 2 or more, over 1.5. Or, I'll say over 1.5, but 1.5 on the run line, giving 1.5, because the Pirates are who they are. That is going to be boosted. They are also working on making the Reds the best price in the state money line. I don't know why they do these things at Betfred, because essentially they're just giving money away tomorrow. They're just giving money away. Because if you think that the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to measle themselves in a Great American Ballpark tomorrow and win that baseball game, you're outside your damn mind. It ain't happening. Which is why I heard, or I don't want to say overheard, they weren't pandering to me. I heard one guy say he's cheap, all right? I heard another guy over there say, I don't know if I can go in because the price of the tickets. I'm just going to buy these guys tickets, okay? I'm going to buy them tickets. Right now, I'm going to buy tickets for the rest of our crew outside of Reed Mouse. He is not allowed to go in. That's a fact. Believe it or not, that's a true thing. He is not allowed to. He's not going in with us, all right? It's not happening.
What time do the Cubs play tomorrow?
Who cares? Who cares?
Is he going to be alone at Moorline watching him on his
Reed
phone?
Mouse is going to be in charge of watching that video board tomorrow at Moorline Lager House, while the rest of us go inside and cheer on the Cincinnati Reds, watch Jonathan India hit a double to start the game, and then we're all going to make money, and we're all going to drink cold beers on Betfred's dime. If you have a gambling problem, as I always say, you must call 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 plus in Ohio. That's that. But shout out Betfred. They support us, and they are going to give us some boost tomorrow. So we appreciate not only, not that I'm wrapping the show up, but we do appreciate our loyal listeners, the people that follow us within our Discord. We have a what I would call, I don't even want to call it a small, but we have a nice, close-knit, genuine community that we're building in Cincinnati through all of our channels and our love for Cincinnati sports. And the truth is tomorrow is a great day. No matter how you feel about the season, no matter whether or not you like ownership or whether you hate ownership, it doesn't matter. Don't let someone take the joy that is opening day from you. Is there a chance this team's going to make the playoffs? No. Hell, they might, though. You never know. You know why? Because it's opening day, and we should feel like there's a little bit of hope. So allow yourself to go there, because who cares what happens? It can't get any worse than last year. Maybe it can, but I doubt it. I highly doubt it. This is about winning a baseball game tomorrow, and that's exactly what the Cincinnati Reds are going to do, Nick, and you're going to be there for it. I got to figure out now. Hopefully the ticket prices haven't gone up like 250% since I started this show. But as long as they haven't done that, we are in.
You'll make it back from Fred, though, so.
I meant to ask this question to every single person that came on this show, and I failed miserably. Luckhaupt brings up some great points. Make noise, make noise. What is it? Is it make some noise, make noise? Is so tired. It's terrible, and Nick loves it.
We're gonna get the whole stadium going tomorrow with this.
I don't think so. I don't think that's not how it works. Everybody goes, what is that?
No, people are going to be into it on opening day. People are going to be all about it. Now I'm conscious of it.
I just can't believe. I mean, we have 52 people in here. Do me a quick favor, Casey, the magic producer, fast as you can. I want everybody to vote on this. I want, is make noise tired or fire?
Fire.
It is tired.
I've just got in my head now.
No.
The whole way home.
It is absolutely gross. We got plenty of people in here to do a realistic poll. I want to know, we're on opposite sides here, the make some noise, make noise thing that was circa 2007. I can't believe we got that going on now.
You think it's on Spotify? I might just put it on a loop to go to sleep tonight.
No, it's definitely not on Spotify. I don't think you're going to be able to find it, period.
They got that thing on.
They got that thing on VHS tape or something. That's how they play it down there. Oh, no. I don't like where this is going at all.
Yes.
It's so bad, guys. Guys, vote this thing out of here.
Make some noise.
It is not fire. We got trolls in the chat.
Make some noise. Make noise.
No. It's so bad. It's genuinely so bad. It's almost so bad that it's embarrassing that other teams, if they knew that was actually a real thing that we played since 2007, they'd be like, really? I go to Wrigley Field, they're like, oh, look at the organist, the live organist up there. And I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I can think about that. No, the Reds are ripping. Make noise, make noise.
Could the organist play make noise, make noise?
That would actually maybe be better.
We can find a solution that works for everyone.
How long, for those that are in the chat right now, how long has that been a thing? Am I crazy? I started paying attention to it when I was in high school. That's when I remember it. Has this been a thing for a long, long time?
I don't remember it not being a thing.
You guys are sitting at half. Oh, baby. This is about as tightly contested of a debate as Ohio and our political spectrum. I mean, we're a swing state. Come on. This Fire. Oh, no. It's an early lead for Fire. It is so bad. In fact, I would venture to say it's so bad that is the greatest failure that the Castellinis have had since they started owning this baseball team. Of all the things that these guys have done to our franchise, that is the lowest, is to allow that song to continue to play in Great American Ballpark. It's so bad they've considered changing the name of the ballpark from Great American to just American because of that song. That's how bad it is. I'm serious. I'm convincing some people. We're back to 50%. Do I got to keep on going? What else do I got to do? I'm trying to pull out my best politician and give a rant that can get me into the percentage of that it's tired. It's so bad. It is. All right, more important things.
I think everyone went to bed. We're just going to be stuck at a 50% stalemate.
Maybe we should just end it at 50%. That seems to be well, I don't know. That would mean a tie. I don't really love ties. So here's the deal. I'm gonna wrap this show up because we have an early morning tomorrow. We will be live at Moreline at 10 a.m. Also live on YouTube. Join us if you haven't. We'll have some more fun. We'll talk some Reds baseball. Nick's gonna be there with us, and then we are going to find our way into the stadium. A couple hours, maybe an hour before first pitch. I don't know. I want to make sure that everyone gets to see the festivities, and then after the game, we are going to figure out what that looks like. I will talk about it off air, off the show, but we to be clear, we plan to go live after every Reds game and have a show. And if it's not live directly after the game, because this weekend's a little weird because Nick's in town, he's gonna go to Kids Opening Day. That's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
Down at Great American Ballpark on Saturday. And I think I'm going to venture to go out there as well. I'm also going to, not to plug another professional franchise on the Red Show, I think I'm going to try to go watch an FC game for the first time. I really am.
Double
Seems
dip?
It just seems like I'm going to be down there anyways. The Reds start at 4. The pitch clock will get me out of there by 5.
My cheap brain loves it. I mean, you only have to pay for parking once. That's huge.
Imagine all the money we can save, Paul. All right. Listen, the fact that there's this many people watching at 9:17 Eastern Daylight Time. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but it's not Eastern Standard Time. When it switches to daylight, it's called daylight time. Just keep that in mind. That's a fun fact of the day. 9:17 Eastern Daylight Time. And we are just out here arguing over make some noise, make noise.
Make some noise, make noise.
Is good or bad. And I'm glad to see that it's tired officially in the chat. And
he's going to end the show instantly.
And that is exactly why. We will see you tomorrow, hopefully at 10 a.m. And if not, catch us after the game. We're just not exactly sure what time that'll be, but we'll make it all work. Thank you for watching. Take care, everybody.